Jim in Tampa, you're next. It's great to have you. I'm glad you waited. I appreciate your patience. Hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
Very well, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm probably one of your few conservative tree hugger movie business followers, supporters. I'm a staunch conservative, and I've been a wildlife rehabilitator for 15 years and was in the movie business for 15 years before that. And was calling specifically to talk
what is a wildlife rehabilitator?
We rescue injured and orphaned wildlife often and nurse it back to health until it can be re-released.
Like pelicans?
Yeah, and you do it free. I mean, you have to make enough money doing a real job in order to contribute this to society. Nobody pays you to do it. You have to be
really?
You have to be licensed by the state and the federal government to have the privilege to do it, but you got to pay all the bills yourself.
No kidding. I thought the state had people that did this.
No,
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and all that.
No, you know, and some of the things you got to do is pay for an $800 a year rabies shot if you're going to handle carnivores like coyotes and wolves because of them.
Oh, yeah.
And no, it's very expensive to do a favor for the community, but it's rewarding.
Well, hey, we love animals here. I think what you do is admirable.
Well, what's amazing to me, or fascinating, is I think true animal lovers, so often we're lumped into the tree hugger, crazy, global warming crowd.
No. That's the animal. That's the PETA crowd. The animal, right? They want to place animals on a level at equal or above humanity. No, you're not that.
Right, and actually, one of the things I've learned watching animals is how much they reflect society. We can learn so much from them. Their political world, there are so many similarities with the human world that it's almost hilarious.
What have you learned, and from which animal?
Well, I'll just give you a couple of quick examples. Here's a negative animal. A cowbird lays more eggs than any other bird. They lay like 77 eggs a year. They do not mate. Most birds, 90% of all birds, mate for life. So if your mate dies, you don't mate anymore. It's a lifetime commitment. The cowbird does not. The partnering bird provides no support. Does most birds, while the female is on the nest, the male bird...
Let me guess. The partnering bird is a male.
Yes, correct.
Provides no support.
Right. And so what the cowbird has to do, since it has no support while it's sitting on a nest, is it lays its nest in another bird's nest and lets that bird take care of its offspring, very often at the cost of life to those other birds, because the cowbird hatches faster, grows bigger, eats more, and very often this hosting bird loses its own offspring because it's raising the cowbird offspring.
Right. So what have you learned about humanity from that?
Well, I see it paralleling, the same situations that the birds that reproduce the fastest and get the support do so at the expense of the hardworking birds that take care of each other.
I see
similar
that.
things with the riots. You can take a pack of totally domestic, wonderful, loving dogs, and if you put one crazy dog in there, that entire pack can turn vicious and killer. It just takes one, aggressive animal to trigger this vicious attack within the entire pack. One of the things that when you were talking a minute ago that I had to chuckle about the if you have a city that's run by a party for a long time and they have riots, they ought to be disqualified from the solution.
Right.
And wolves actually do that. We had a pack of wolves that we raised. When I say we, my wife and I worked together. She's a veterinarian technician, so we did this as a joint effort. But the wolves, when I was learning how to care for them, we ended up with them kind of unexpectedly. So it was a learning process of, when they first come in, you're scared to death you're going to be eaten by them. But as you watch the way they run their own society, you realize they're totally self-sufficient. They take care of themselves. But there's an alpha male and an alpha female that set the rules and discipline and enforce the pack.
Were you able to domesticate any of them?
In the case of the wolves, half of them were tame. You could go in the enclosure with them. The tame ones would come up and visit. The wild ones would disappear. They wanted nothing to do with you. There's only a few cases in the history of the United States where a wolf has ever killed a
Sounds like women.
despite the Hollywood thing. They're pretty much self-centered.
Yeah, Hollywood devastates wolves. Every movie about wolves, they're just nothing but rampant. One of them even killed Liam Neeson in a movie.
I know it. It's hilarious because, like I say, in the last 200 years, there's 6 cases of a wolf ever killing a person, and it's usually either a rabid animal or in an extreme remote.
Well, I knew a guy that one of the radio consultants in Sacramento had a pet wolf. He called him Jack. He had a cabin out in the woods near I think it was Reno, and he had a wolf that lived in the house with him. It made it sound like it was a pet within certain limits. It wasn't totally, but he was never afraid of it.
Well, we had one that was the lowest ranking wolf that we called the house wolf. She was so timid. We raised her with the dogs, and she became part of the household. Used to travel with me. She actually, one of the things about animals is if they're not in need of food and survival, they're basically, for the most part, friendly to other species. This wolf helped us raise dozens of fawns. She would nurse the fawn, clean it, protect it, provide all the services that the mother did because she was well-fed. She didn't need to eat it. So the hostility largely disappears.
Well, I'd say this stuff all fascinates me. I don't mean to sound silly here, but I have I've had a bunch of cats, and you feed them, you put the food in their bowl. The bowl is on a floor, and after they eat what they want, they start covering it. They think they're covering it. They start pawing the ground. They're not covering anything, and nobody's going to steal their food. Well, what is that? That's just it's not instinct. It's
animals. You've got the ones that have the cognitive ability, the ability to think ahead and to plan. Now, in the covering, they may be trying to hide it to save for later. A lot of animals will bury food and then come back to it.
Right. Oh, I know that's what she's doing, but there's nobody's going to take her food, and she's not covering it. Can she not?
We had a funny thing with the wolf that lived with the dogs because supposedly wolves are much smarter than dogs. So we watched this wolf to try to look for signs of differences of intelligence. And besides the fact she could open doors, windows, door latches, any kind of door she could open. When we fed the dogs, we had 12 at the time. We put 12 dishes of food down. We usually mixed a little canned food in it, and we'd set the empty can out in the middle of the room so whichever animal was finished first, it would go lick out the can and not bother the other animals that were eating. And for many, many weeks, the hound dog would gobble her food without chewing, run over and grab the can, and that was it. The hound dog always got it because she just ate the fastest. Well, one day the wolf left her full dish of food and went over to the empty can, and I'm thinking, that's not very smart. You're supposed to be smarter than the dogs. You're leaving a full dish to get the empty can. She picked up the can, brought it back to her dish, set it in the middle of the dish, ate her dinner, and then licked the can out after her dinner was done.
Wow, that's brilliant.
And she did that forever after. None of the other dogs ever figured out they could do the same thing. But the wolf...
you're just angered half the audience who think the dog is smarter than their spouse.
Yeah. Well,
now, look, Jim, hang on. I have to take a break. Jim actually called about Dr. Benjamin Carson, folks.
Yes.
So let's get to that, Jim, when we get back to you after the break here. Okay, back to the phones we go, and it's Jim in Tampa who actually called about Dr. Benjamin Carson. What is it about Dr. Carson you wanted to say?
Well, I saw his announcement this morning and was extremely impressed. I really knew nothing about him, but one of the things he mentioned, he wanted to dispel the rumor that goes with so many Republicans that they're out to eliminate what he called safety nets in the form of welfare and support. That what he wanted to eliminate, he said, I don't want to eliminate safety nets for people who need them. I want to eliminate dependence of able-bodied people that can work. And that's what got me thinking about the wildlife tie-in, because animals are the same way. We got so many calls as wildlife rehabilitators to relocate problem animals. And so many times it was because people were feeding them, and then the animals become not only dependent, but demanding. We had one story where a lady called and asked if we relocated raccoons. And I said, yeah, when you say raccoons, you talking a couple? She said 12. And long story short, I asked her, have you been feeding them? And she said, yes. And I said, we need to stop feeding them, and they will stop bothering you. She said, well, we try that, but around 1 in the morning, they get rocks and bang on the window, so we feed them so we can get to sleep. And I said, well, you've now trained those animals that if they bang on the windows.
Well, see, this is. I mean, I remember stories of small businesses off the coast of North Carolina would take people out and basically say, we're going to show you some wildlife in the sea. And the way they had done it, they had begun to feed various fish, and the fish came to expect it at the right place. And these entrepreneurs just have to take the boats with people out, and the people would pay for the food as part of the admission price. And then these fish would come out, whatever kind of exotic fish that these people had found, and they'd watch them be fed. And it was clear they had become dependent, which in the wildlife sector is a disservice. They have to be able to provide for themselves, or they're toast, as you well know. But it's interesting, of all the things that caught your attention, even though it relates to your work, it was Dr. Carson's commenting on welfare. I have the soundbite. I'm going to play the soundbite here, but there's a lot to be said about this. I find that it's going to be a little tricky because I don't want to sound at all like I'm critical of Dr. Carson, because I am not. My only point is he is not the first to point this out. Now, he may be the first you have heard say it in a way that relates to your business so that you understood it and knew that he was right and so forth. But the intellectual, the societal, the economic arguments against welfare have been made for decades, and they're all right on the money. And yet, the number of people on welfare continues to expand. The number of people on welfare wanting to be on welfare expands, even though everybody knows it's a dead-end street. And I think largely this is because there's a political party that has decided to profit from it. And that's not compassion. A political party profiting from keeping people poor and dependent is not a party that needs to be rewarded by winning elections. Here's what Dr. Carson, he was in Detroit today. That's his hometown. He announced that he is running for president. We've actually got 4 sound bites. We'll have time for this one on welfare.
There are many people who are critical of me because they say Carson wants to get rid of all the safety nets and welfare programs, even though he must have benefited from them. This is a blatant lie. I have no desire to get rid of safety nets for people who need them. I have a strong desire to get rid of programs that create dependency in able-bodied people. And we're not doing people a favor when we pat them on the head and they say, there, you poor little thing, we're going to take care of all your needs. You don't have to worry about anything. You know who else says stuff like that? Socialists.
Exactly right. And what he said here is known and is understood by all kinds of zillions of people. But you notice the way they go after him. Well, who are you? You want to get rid of all safety nets, welfare programs, even though you must have benefited from them. That's the same thing they did to Clarence Thomas in reverse. They accused him of wanting to get rid of affirmative action, even though he benefited from it, to which he replied that he did not. But anyway, have to take a break because of time. Now, you want a provocative statement? Try this. Welfare has done more harm to the black community than police brutality ever has. Yeah, think about it before you automatically knee-jerk reject it. And sit tight, my friends. Broadcast excellence resumes momentarily.